What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. Today, as promised, we're going to go over the Transformers Netflix Earthrise. We talked about it a bit on Nerd Rage this week, but I hadn't really got the chance to get into it, partly because I was bored by it, but also partly because I didn't quite understand the direction it was going. I did finish it. I don't hate it. We will get to it, but first we got to do a little bit of housekeeping. And we'll start with the Maja case. There was a lot of questions about it. Somebody asked, do you think it would display well without the plexiglass in front of it? I think it will display well, but I think it will also look incomplete. I just want to be honest about that. There's a lot of like bolts and stuff that will be visible that I think you might find perhaps aesthetically unpleasing. Somebody said that it was an unnecessary, what did they say, something like for me, and he can't even fill the space with it. Look, this is the first time that I've gotten in front of the problem. Bought the thing to fill the space. I don't have all the things and then have to figure out how to fill the space. I'm doing it the best way possible, in my opinion, which worked for me. They said I've crowded it with stuff at the top. That might be true. And like I said in the video, I don't think it's its final place. I'm still working through it. And then they said I covered a vent. It's a faux vent, and I didn't cover it. I'm not saying you're a bozo. I'm saying you got bozo tendencies. Let me worry about the safety of my home. Good grief. Secondly, Make Toys Downbeat. A lot of people saying they were going to switch out their original downbeat for this one. I definitely am not. I think this is a really good offering, and I'm really excited to see where Make Toys can go in the future, because this does feel like old school Make Toys to me, and it feels great, and I want them to produce more. But it, design-wise, like with the stickers and stuff, like the sticker look is just it's a bit much for me personally. So to anyone curious, no, I will not be switching out. However, in a perfect world, I would like to take the silver bits and replace the gray bits from the first one. And I'm not trying to persuade you from not swapping out. I just want to give my 2 cents on that. And third was the display critique. I don't know if these are children watching this or what. I don't get it. But like, take for instance the first one that has the Detolphimus. We say that we like that display. We have some critiques of it, but we say we like it. And then this guy was like, oh, he doesn't like it, and he just because it's a, like, dude, shut up. You know what I mean? Shut up and listen. Once again, I respect anybody that submitted photos for it, and everybody that has submitted photos for it and we've gone over in the video have all contacted me for the most part and been like, I 100% agree with you, or I'm working on that aspect of it, or I didn't see that and now I see it, or even like, look, I get where you're coming from, but I kind of like it where it's at, which is fine. What do you want us to say? Like, good one, next, good one, next, good one. Not saying you're a bozo, saying you got bozo tendencies. Hey, and real quick, buddy of mine, a Patreon supporter who I try to look out for all the Patreon supporters, hit me up and said he's looking for an X-Transbots Aegis, the non-cartoon version. He's looking to buy one, so if you got a non-toon version of that, please email me. My email's in the description, and I'll get you two in touch. And with that, I think we can get right into the show. So I want to, before we get into like my good, bad, and ugly of it, I want to give little Easter eggs and little tidbits and little stuff that I found interesting and that my buddy Andy was willing to put together for me so that I could kind of get to the meat and potatoes of it a bit faster. So we're just going to kind of run off some little things that we noticed that harken back to other stuff, Easter eggs if you will, or little bits of information that he's found online. So let's go ahead and get into that. So Earthrise, again, is a tie to the Hasbro's War of Cybertron, or War for Cybertron, rather, trilogy, which consists of Siege, Earthrise, and Kingdom. All three series were developed at the same time as one project. DeSanto has said Hasbro were closely involved with the series development, but mandated very little and more or less gave the series a blank slate in terms of story and tone, which I love to hear. Let the creators create. That's the way to move, Hasbro. The series is once again overseen by F.J. DeSanto, who previously worked on the hated Machinima Prime Wars trilogy. He has become pretty outspoken about his distaste for that project. DeSanto considers each series to be a movie divided into 6 parts. The season continues the reuse of Seekers and Reflector as the primary Decepticon foot soldiers, just like More Than Meets the Eye. Cybertron is in a state of nuclear winter without the Allspark, the planet's source of energon. DeSanto also said that they deliberately gave no concrete indication as to how much time has passed between seasons. A Decepticon at Sector 12 talks about how Megatron led the lower classes to freedom and about his days in the arena. Alita 1 later tells Megatron he was her hero. Just because I knew the hero doesn't mean I can absolve the monster. This particular aspect of the story is pulled almost verbatim from the IDW comics. Kaon, and specifically the Kaon Arena Megatron rose to fame in, serves as the Decepticons' base, just as in the IDW comics. The Mercenaries make their debut. Described by Hasbro and DeSanto as a loose affiliation of scavengers and pirates, they are led by Double Dealer and notably feature Exhaust and Bugbite,
the latter of whom actually has his origins as a GoBot. The Quintessons are introduced, and their leader, Decius, is in the planet Char, a major location from Season 3 of G1. And while we're on the topic, the Spiral ship also appears. The exact correlation between the Quintessons, Allspark, and the Transformers' origins are never explicitly answered, and this is intentional, claims DeSanto. It seems as though the Quintessons once ruled over the Cybertronians, using them as slaves like in G1. Unlike in G1, it seems they were just alien invaders. This is taken from the aligned continuity. Like all Quintessons, Decius is divided into 6 distinct personalities. The Face of Wrath ultimately takes over and cuts off the others. Bumblebee thought the Quintessons were a myth. DeSanto has said that Alpha Trion led the Cybertronians to freedom like in G1. However, he said this is out of living memory for most Transformers, with Megatron's revolution being against a caste system similar to IDW. DeSanto said Trion brought a young Megatron, Prime, Elita, and Ultra Magnus together to lead their people to freedom from this caste system, with the final battle being at Tarnhauser Gate. The split occurred when Megatron killed Alpha Trion and insisted on a military dictatorship. Megatron insists on calling Elita Ariel. In G1, this was her original name before she was destroyed and rebuilt as Elita 1. It's intended to hint at their prior status as allies. The Space Bridge is in the Nebulon system, a famous planet from G1, which ties into the Headmasters, which we'll get to in a bit. Between this and Siege, it is clear that Optimus and Elita are more than friends. IDW introduced the concept of Conjux and Dora. Since Cybertronians live such unnaturally long lives, two can make a pledge to live them together. Transformers do not have sexual relationships, no matter what the Tumblr gifs will tell you. The Dead universe is pulled from the IDW comics. Here it is presented as a place where thought is reality and is somewhat akin to the Negative Zone from DC Comics. Within the Dead universe, several echoes or shadows of ancient Transformers can be seen, including Solus Prime, Alchemist Prime, and the Fallen. This seemingly confirms the now default original 13 Primes is canon to this universe. Galvatron appears in an almost shot-for-shot remake of his original G1 birth, with DeSanto explaining this mysterious grid can be used by Unicron to traverse or bend space in some way. Skylink shows Prime several possible futures if he continues down the dark, uncertain path he is on, one being his death from the 86 movie, and the other is his turn to evil, becoming Nemesis Prime. Galvatron similarly seems to be a dark reflection of Megatron's future if he continues to go further and further in his war. In this way, Skylynx and Galvatron sort of serve the same purpose to the Autobot and Decepticon leaders narratively in the story. Galvatron tells Megatron to claim the Matrix and the Golden Disc. The Golden Disc was a real-world artifact sent on board the Voyager space shuttle, containing a record of human history. In Beast Wars, it was inscribed by the original G1 Megatron with a way to change time, in case the Decepticons should lose the war. While its exact function here is unknown, it's clear that it is the key to changing the future in some way. The Ark and Nemesis crash on prehistoric Earth, just as in G1, and the Velociraptor at the end is the Beast Wars character Dinobot. Kingdom will introduce new versions of the Beast Wars characters, with the time travel of this season likely meaning they are still the future descendants of the Autobots and Decepticons. Which leads into Kingdom, which has been confirmed to have only 6 episodes with no future seasons currently planned, at least as part of this current trilogy project. DeSanto has said that the goal is to evolve Megatron and Optimus into their G1 personalities, though he says this series is its own rebooted take on G1.
All right, so now with that out of the way, just little fun tidbits, let me go ahead and give my review of it. And I'm going to go ahead and start by saying I don't think it's terrible, which is a good thing. I didn't think the first one was terrible either. I thought the first one was average. If you had to ask me which one I prefer, this one over that one, I think I might prefer this one, but it's by a teeny, itty, bitty little baby bit. So, you know what we do here? We do the good, we do the bad, we do the ugly. Let's start with the good. Megatron, I feel like they nailed him. I feel like they made him perhaps a little bit too committed to the evil mustache twirler to an extent, but you can see the path where he came from. This season does have more character development. I wish some of it was in season 1. I think that I would be committed more to it, but it is in this season, and I think they did a good job with him. I think there's heart in his character. There's soul in his character. Whereas a lot of times I often feel like they feel soulless and lifeless and just sort of fitting a motif, if you will. I also like the Quintessons. They seemed terrifying. You know, I mean, obviously I wasn't like shaking under my bed, or maybe I was. Maybe that's how I'm built, man. Just 5-headed eggs just scare the shit out of me. But like they seemed like an intimidating force for the first time to me. And they also, you know, I know that they're always supposed to have the distinct separate personalities, but this is the first time that I've felt like, oh, they're actually conflicted. Like, and I like that. I like that they kind of expounded upon that. You get to see more of that. You get to see more of the debate between them and that they all don't get along, but they're kind of forced to live in this egg, as it were. So I dug how they did the Quintessence. I wish they would have gone further with them. I wish we would have gotten more, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they might play a larger role in Kingdom, so I'm holding off my judgment for them. Judgment. Huh? I liked the idea of Galvatron traveling through time to talk to Megatron. And if you told me that on paper, I would have told you that I probably wouldn't. However, seeing it in the show, I was like, no, this works for me. And I dug Galvatron, and he did seem like Megatron from the future. It all seemed to work for me. I liked it. I liked the character voice. I liked all of it. That dynamic between those two is some of my favorite stuff from this series, period. And while we're on the topic of character dynamics, I also like the dynamic between Alita 1 and Megatron. There's real heart there. There's real soul there. There's Alita coming to terms with the idea that this person that she kind of idolized and worshipped to an extent and looked up to and put on a pedestal, and then had to come to terms with herself that's not the same person that she was at one time looking up to, that it's become something else, that power corrupts and absolute power perhaps corrupts absolutely, and this is, you know, with whom she chose to place her faith and how it's paid out for her, right? Like, die a hero, live long enough to see yourself become a villain, like that sort of thing, and that's real depth. I dig that. I like the idea also of introducing a third group, right? The mercenaries, of introducing a third faction, of more complications in terms of a very binary story, right? Good, bad. I like when they throw in those shades of gray, or people that are out for their own kind of intentions and their own self-worth, or gain rather. And like, I like that they introduced that. I'm not sure if I like the name mercenaries, like Autobots, Decepticons, mercenaries. One of these things is not like the others. Like, I feel like they could have put a different name on that and kind of really added something to it, but I feel like that's a missed opportunity. I really do. But I do like it conceptually. I also really enjoyed the Skylinks character. Once again, I got a lot of character development from this guy. Like, you know, I've critiqued other shows recently on this channel where I've talked about my lack of interest in their character explanations. I feel like I got more from Skylinks than I have from some of them. He's a far more interesting character to me. Yes, it's a departure from G1, but that's okay. It's more interesting. It's better to me. And I dug it an awful lot. And then I think it's a smart idea to try to tie Beast Wars into it. Beast Wars has a dedicated fan base. They love that stuff, and kind of, I mean, obviously I know it was always part of G1, and if you ask me, I think that was kind of, I won't get into it, but I like the idea of, no, concrete, we're locking it in. We're locking it in here. So I think that's a cool idea and concept, too. And that's my good. And that's a fair amount of good for me from a Transformers show. We have to admit, we're all on the same page here, right? So move on to the bad. There are some real negative things to me about the show, and one of which, and perhaps the biggest miss in the whole show, is Optimus Prime. He's just inconsistent. I don't know if he is always the same character throughout the show. Sometimes it seems like he just bends the rules to his will. And what I like about Optimus Prime is that he's the guy that always has it figured out, right? Like, he's the ultimate leader. He's got the plan. He's planned it, and not in a Batman way. He's planned it in like a strategy, like in a tactical strategy that also pays out for the good of his troops. Nobody's expendable. It's, you know, like, I could go on, but in this, it seems like he has some, like, sometimes killing doesn't seem like a good idea, unless it's Scorponok, in which case it doesn't seem like a bad idea. And like, I don't know, and not to get into that moral debate, it's not about that, it's about the consistency of the character, and it doesn't always work for me. It doesn't seem like he makes the best decisions, let alone turning Cybertron into a nuclear, you know, winter, and then having to kind of apologize for it and take ownership of it, which I did like, but I just, it doesn't seem like the character. I think that at the end of the day, he doesn't seem like a good leader. And that's what's kind of most important to get about him. The guy that when he's next to you, you feel 100% secure. That he could send you into any scenario and you would feel confident if you had this leader by your side or in front of you. And I don't get that from him in this show. One thing I'm going to say is bad, even though I said I liked it, but it's just that, like, I'm just getting tired of it. It's a side note. It's a small thing. We're getting ready to get to the biggest thing. Time travel. It's everywhere now. It's in Marvel. It's in DC, upcoming with Flash. It's in Star Wars now, thanks to Rebels. It's now in Transform. Like, I'm just getting tired of time travel as a storytelling kind of or plot device in order to introduce certain aspects. It's just not my favorite, and I'm getting tired of it. And I often feel like every time you introduce time travel, it only muddies the water. It rarely ever cleans it. And then my last issue and biggest issue with the whole show, both season 1 and this one, is the pacing. It's just so bloody slow. And I'm not talking about the character development bits that are in this that slow down the action. Those are needed. I'm talking about the actual dialogue and rhythm of it. Like, it doesn't cut on the action, if you know what I'm saying. Like, it just meanders through this story instead of just boom, 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 and get to the dialogue. Get to the long bits of dialogue between Optimus and Megatron, between Megatron and Prime, between Megatron and Galvatron, between Megatron and Elita. I said Megatron and Prime twice, didn't I? Don't worry about it. I'm excited. But, like, I just wish they would get to it. I started watching it at one time, and I had to restart it because I just found myself picking my phone up or, putting my socks away or, you know what I mean? Like, I just found myself distracted because I just got bored with long sweeping shots or characters walking or, you know what I mean? Like, I think this show has a pacing issue. I think that ultimately, while it's supposed to be one movie broken down into 6 episodes, they could probably just take 6 episodes and turn it into 1 hour-and-a-half movie. It's probably the better choice. In Ugly, I don't really have a lot, and it doesn't really bother me a ton, but I still need to point it out. For one, some of the effects seem off, especially with the spaceships in space. I don't know. It just doesn't look like when the spaceship was, like, the Nemesis was moving through the clouds and stuff, it looked beautiful. Nemesis and the Ark out in space looked silly to me. It looked like 80s video games or something. Like, it didn't work for me. While we're on the topic of space, the fact that the whole thing does take place in space for the most part, it feels like, has a hard time grounding it, so to speak, for me. With a show called Earthrise, I would have liked for them to get on Earth at some point and kind of operate in that scenario a bit, but they know that doesn't happen. That's a personal thing. That's not their fault. It's what I wanted, not what they produced. So I get it. It's just, I don't know. It seems poorly titled, I guess. And the fact that the Velociraptor, like Dinobot, is already mechanical, I guess, is playing into the time traveling bit, but I would have liked if perhaps them landing on Earth would have caused the Beast Wars mechanism. Once again, that's something that I would have preferred, not necessarily a problem with the story, but something I do want to mention. So I want to go and give my final score for this, and it's a 7 out of 10. But 7's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's ultimately fine. There's a lot of stuff I really like about it. I don't think they've quite nailed it down yet. They only have one more season to do it, so it's, I doubt that they will. I think that they found the rhythm that they're going to use for it. I just think it's the wrong choice. But ultimately, I think it's a decent enough show. It was a fun watch. I love the tone of it. I love the grit of it. I love the seriousness and gravitas of it. I just wish it would get to it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend watching it if you haven't watched it, or if it's, hopefully I haven't spoiled too much of it for you. But yeah, so that's where I'm at with it, 7 out of 10, which is pretty solid. I'll be back next week with the Toy World thing, I believe, unless something monumental happens. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Take care.